Today on Radio Times, we want to look at the history, the appeal, and the roots of political humor. And we have two guests who have joined us here in our Philadelphia studio. Alison Dagnes is an associate professor of political science at Shippensburg University, that's here in Pennsylvania. And she's the author of a new book called A Conservative Walks into a Bar, The Politics of Political Humor. And Alison Dagnes, nice to have you with us on Radio Times.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Also with us is Danica Young, and she's an assistant professor at the University of Delaware, where she's a fellow at the Center for Political Communication. She does comedy improv, and she's also a contributor to flakcheck.org at Penn Annenberg. And we see what Gene from Cinnaminson has to say. Gene, go ahead. You're on Radio Times. Hi, Gene.
Hi, you still there?
Yes, are you still there? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm still here.
Go ahead.
What about the possibility that the reason conservatives think that Colbert is conservative is not that they're biased, but that the conservative mind just doesn't get irony. When I talk to conservatives, they don't get that kind of humor.
Well, that's interesting, and I have to say, Dana's jumping up and down here.
Gene!
Go ahead, Dana.
Friend, how are you? So I have gotten in arguments about this with people across the aisle, but I'm going to tell you in a snippet here. There is some evidence that points to the fact that what you're saying is true. And the evidence comes from these really fancy fMRI studies, neuropsychology, studies of cognitive psychology at NYU that have been going on the last 10 years, where they're looking at the brain structures and functioning of liberals versus conservatives. And they find some amazing things. They find a larger amygdala among conservatives, meaning you have a higher threat response, mortality, and your own death is very salient to you. They find larger anterior cingulate cortexes among liberals, which means that you are better able to navigate uncertain situations. There's also been studies, also from this team at NYU, that look at aesthetic preferences among liberals and conservatives, finding that liberals are far more likely to appreciate things that are abstract, like abstract art, plays that don't have a happy ending, etc. And they tie that back to a personality trait or psychological trait called need for closure. People who need things tied up in a knot at the end, that trait correlates very strongly with a conservative ideology. So all that is to say, Gene, that I'm in the middle of putting together this elaborate argument that says that what you're saying is right, and that it is irony is something that is just the natural pairing with a liberal mind. An exaggeration, where you heighten an existing reality, that is something that's a natural pairing, I believe, with a conservative mind.
Interesting. Alison, makes sense. Gene, thanks for the call.
It makes a lot of sense to me.